do the people making period products care about the people using them? Is it almost like you're disappointing other people when you decide to step away from clinical medicine? Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dr. Rumbi. Today I'm joined by the one and only Olivia of Fluus. And today's an exciting day for the team because, I guess I'm going to age us by saying what day this was filmed, but not only has she come straight from BBC's Women's Hour, they're also launching in Boots in a couple of days' time. So it's a really exciting time. Also speaking to a doctor who's become a founder, I am going to be asking about all the tips for me and my founder journey as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this conversation. Liv, welcome.
Thank you, Rumbi. How are you?
I'm good. Tell me a little bit about your exciting day today, because I feel like it's not been an ordinary one.
No, you're absolutely right. My ordinary day is usually sat in front of a screen taking back-to-back calls. But this morning, I got myself down to Central. I first started off with an interview with The Times. They're writing a piece on female entrepreneurship, so I talked them through our funding journey and launching in Boots. Then I went inside the building and did a little segment on BBC Women's Hour. Mm-hmm. That was really wonderful, talking about the nationalisation of the competition that actually put me first on this journey, which was an imperial competition. Mm. Then I made my way over here to film this podcast with you.
I'm very honoured to be in the mix of that day, The Times, BBC, and Conversations with Dr. Rumbi. Yep, I'm claiming it. We made it.
No, this is a highlight. I love long-form conversations that allow us to go into it. And I especially love being able to, especially educate and talk around the different personal experiences. So I love it. Thank you.
It would be good to know. I feel like today's a really pivotal day, especially seeing what you've built so far. But sometimes we see people in where you are today and like, oh my God, she's so successful, and forget the journey that's come into it. Can you tell us a little bit about where this all started, a bit of background from your career and how where you started results in where you are today?
Of course. So just over 10 years ago, I was at Imperial. So I was at medical school. I was halfway through, so I just finished my intercalation year. And I was very much looking at, what am I going to specialize in when I go, and where do a foundation training post do I want to apply into? And I saw this poster in Imperial for this female-only entrepreneurship competition. And I genuinely, the two things that intrigued me was that, one, I knew that my time at university was coming to an end in the next couple of years, and there were so many opportunities that I hadn't taken advantage of. So that was a big driver. And the second thing was I saw winning pot of £10,000.
Ooh.
So myself and at the time my housemate Aaron entered the competition with it wasn't a flushable pad at the time, but it was a different version, a previous iteration of our company and product and idea. And it was essentially a series of masterclasses that opened my horizons into understanding what are the different possibilities I can do with my career. I always knew that making a positive impact was a huge part of what I wanted to be a part of. And so it was instantly direct in medicine.
Yeah.
I could make those local changes, but I also saw this opportunity where after we won that could I grow this £10,000 into actual bigger positive impact?
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, is this opportunity to make this a more of a global impact? So I didn't actually do anything there. It was still my penultimate year at university, continued my studies, but then Aaron and I started speaking to potential customers. People loved the idea of a flushable pad, and there wasn't anyone else who was doing this at the time. And so there was a part of me that thought, I suppose it's a little egotistical, but if at that time no one else is doing it, and I just let this go, would it just never come about?
Yeah.
So there were two things that for me was going to give me the confidence to leave medicine. Number one, that this was a very practical, scalable, realistic, and profitable idea, because I knew that I wasn't building a charity in doing this. This was a consumer goods that I could imagine, building a proper company and P&L out of. But the other thing was, will this truly have the positive impact that I have intended it to? Because I see a lot of companies who start off with the mission, but it's always we're chasing profitability versus that. So those are the two answers where I needed to know before I raised any investment or before we started doing anything and me moving away from medicine. So the first 2.5 years, Aaron and I continued, working in the NHS. I did F1 and F2 years, and Aaron went into this sort of, I would say, full time. Like he just was dedicating his time to this with money that we won through competitions and grants.
Fantastic.
So we raised about £300,000 over those 3 years, just about 4 competitions and grants. So it allowed us to invest in product development and IP development without having to take people's, I suppose it is people's money, but without having to give up.
Exactly.
It is
a
different.
share of the company for that money.
Yes, exactly. And then what happened was, one, we got certified as flushable. So the product became real. It was actually flushable, and it passed the test that no other pad had done before. And then secondly, it was defensible. We submitted patents. We knew that it was a different enough technology that could be scaled up. And we knew then there wasn't really any reason for me not to go into it. So September 2019, after the August that we all change over, I took the train down from Manchester Piccadilly, and I haven't really looked back since.
Wow, that is beautiful. And it just shows testament of how much of a journey this is. I would love to dig a bit deeper into your doctor career. Yes. So for anyone that's listening, you mentioned you did your undergraduate, so you studied medicine, became a doctor, and then did F1 and F2. So those are the first 2 years you qualify as a doctor. And within those years, you rotate through various rotations. What was that like for you whilst also building a business?
That was such a great question. I was in two hearts at that moment. One is when I'm thinking with my medic hat on, I had always been very driven by an almost immediate gratification type of department. So I was looking at theatre work or something like A&E, and something that was or acute psychiatry, or something where it allowed me to see the results of my work within a week or two. But also in F2, you've got the GP and you've got more of the community training. So I wanted to I was very conscious of picking a track that allowed me to have the diversity. But I also, in the back of my head, knew that along with diversity comes you've got so much more you've got to make sure that you know your stuff before you turn up. But I also was having to then, after a series of night shifts, take a train directly from Manchester to London for a full day of investor meetings or other things that we needed to do. And I became very, very unwell. So I knew that I was letting one part of myself down that really, really wanted to give all my best to my medic career. So something had to give. And, given the fact that I was given and afforded this opportunity with raising our first round of funding and the commitment that we got from our customers, I felt that this was the time that I could step away. But I knew that I'd finished my F2. So as it also means that provided I, do the test and come back in, it also affords me a path back into medicine should I miss it too much.
Absolutely. I find one of the most difficult things, especially with a career like medicine, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is it's almost like you're disappointing other people when you decide to step away from clinical medicine. Did you find that? Because that's something I've experienced, especially from family and friends. They have so much pride in, Rumbi's a doctor. Then you say, actually, I'm doing other things too. It's almost like you're disappointing them than yourself.
Yes, you're so right. You've articulated that really well. My personal experiences with that is that I found my personal critique in my head was to be a lot harsher than what was the reality. Coming from an Asian culture, there is an intense amount of pride within having a doctor within your family. And within my family, I was the first to sort of go into that field. And so my mum and dad were so incredibly proud. I knew that was why I probably put such a high bar before stepping away, and it took me so long to properly go into this full time. But when I spoke to them about it, they saw how unwell I was during those F1 and F2, and hand on heart, their response was, as long as whatever makes you happy. They just asked me to keep the doctor title. That was the only ask.
The thing is, you've worked really hard for your title, and there's no reason to drop that at all.
I pay my GMC license for it.
Exactly. Was there anything, not just in your medical school training, but in the working that you did as a doctor that you think was really, really crucial to helping you build, or any skills that came from that?
Yes, so many. I'm so thankful that I did medicine, and there's absolutely no regrets. Partially for, I would say number one is when you ice your patients, ideas, concerns, and expectations is a phrase that we use to really ensure that not only are you meeting the physical needs of the patient, but, you know, meeting their expectations and ensuring that they walk out from the room, you know, feeling like they've had their needs heard or listened to. That is something that I use all the time. I think that whenever I pitch with investors or speak with suppliers, the first thing that will come to my head is, what are they looking for?
Yeah.
Because me just trying to get my point across will just fall upon deaf ears. And so there is so much communication, and the way that we are taught in medical school to find different ways of communicating the same thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say, the second and probably really important, is, do you remember the courses of breaking bad news?
Yes.
It was such a life skill on how, as founders, I think there are a lot of expectations that hold upon you, like whether to your family, to the team, to investors, to customers. There's a lot of expectations of what things should happen. And I will hold my hands up. Nothing has ever happened on time or within budget. And so breaking the news to people to say, you know, something's happened, we're going to take a bit more time, but giving the truthful, open, honest conversation about it has been something that I really, really benefited from. The last point, I'm not sure is specific to medicine, but maybe just more academia. We do a lot of, we will ask ourselves questions during product development that I have no idea even where to get started, but understanding how to do academic searches and do those kinds of things is a skill that I've very much benefited from.
Definitely. I mean, I love ICE. ICE is my go-to. Anytime someone says, or how do I advocate for myself in an appointment, or how I'm not quite getting where I need to get to, and I've been going back to my doctor for XYZ, I'm like, what are your ideas, concerns, and expectations? Communicate those. And then if you don't, we can work from there. But I absolutely love ICE.
I love it too.
And it's really interesting that you mentioned the breaking bad news. Because like you said, a lot of the time, things are over budget. Things are not quite running on time, especially when there's other factors that are beyond your control. And there's maybe investors or other people that are saying, where is this? Where is that? And being able to communicate that. I think that's so beautiful. I am going to start utilizing some of those skills a lot more outside of medicine. Yeah. I guess that builds us nicely into where we are today with Fluus. How did you guys go from the idea? What was the building process? Like you said, becoming flushable. This was something that no other pad had done. What was that process like?
At the beginning, it was extremely insular. So I was drawing on my own personal experiences and nothing else, which is not the way that I would recommend product development, but it was how it happened. I was designing for myself, which is a mistake that we've learned from. But after we learned that, then we have been critical in having a diverse but representative customer group to test our products. So our pads have been worn and tested by over 20,000 people.
Wow.
That is something, a statistic that I'm so incredibly proud of, because it went from one extreme, it was essentially Aaron creating a pad that was perfect, but just for me. And then learning to expand that process for everyone else. And so we borrowed from other industries.
Nice.
So agriculture, embroidery, and food uses a lot of the same base ingredients and polymers that are used within our products, because I was looking at things that were body safe, so non-toxic. So if we can eat it, then we can put it against our vulva. But then learning about the industry, it was pretty much a Google search. Yep. And then understanding who are the major players. Thankfully, or rather unfortunately, there are only 3 or 5 major players within the space. So it is not a long list of people. And then it's just good old-fashioned online sleuthing, going onto LinkedIn and seeing who's worked where, what are the different types of roles and how are they promoted within those companies, what is clearly important, and trying to figure out outside in how the industry works. That was, I would say, describe my journey for the first 3 to 4 years. But I benefited a lot from the kindness and belief from others. So the first technology that allowed us to create something flushable, the main issue within the industry is all products are made from acrylic hot glue.
Okay.
So even if you replace all the materials with something biodegradable, organic and all of that, you've fused the layers together with this acrylic glue, sort of like the stuff on your nails, right? That's not going to biodegrade. That's going to encase those biodegradable products. There was a process that we discovered that allowed us to use completely none of those processes, and it was actually invented by a woman in the UK. Her daughter now continues to run that company, but it was a simple conversation. We explained to her that actually their technology was currently used in car welding, but then they managed to see that actually this could be used in flushable period care. Then the mother got so excited, and then, like you said, we had global suppliers gifting us tons of material to test on, and so we just brought those people along this journey, and I just benefited from the kindness of others.
That's amazing. And it really shows that once you identify something that not just you care about, but other people, this is a huge gap.
It's incredibly motivating, but also it's so inspiring to see that not only are we building a product, but it's more of a movement. To get people,
Exactly that. Exactly a movement. And I love what you said about borrowing from different industries. So borrowing from embroidery, food. And it really brings me to think about, there was a recent paper that came out, a recent study which came out saying that they found in tampons pesticides. And it's things like this that really make me think about, do the people making period products care about the people using them, you know?
That's a great question. One, I can describe that in, I would say, my introduction to the industry, because I would say I was asking myself a lot of the same questions that you were. I would often find myself in a room of tampon manufacturers, pad manufacturers, pad investors, people who live, breathe, and, or only live in this space, but not a single one of them were users.
Yeah.
And within that space, it means that you miss out on, I would say, softer, more intuited knowledge that can only come from a lived experience. And so I think a big part is creating more of the actual lived experience within the industry, because a lot of the innovation that I was seeing when I go to fairs is, why don't we just make the pulp of the pad blue? And I'm like, what does that achieve? Why? And they're like, because it's a new color and all pads have been white. And I'm like, why not have a pad that detects if your pH changes or if there's an effect, create something that's actually different and functional and, something that would actually help me within that experience. And so I think, firstly, there's a lack of representation of users within the industry. The second part is that given the fact that there's only 2 or 3 major players, they have no incentive to create that shift. I think when I talk about borrowing from other industries, I use Nikon as an example in camera a lot, because they created the digital camera years before, but they just sat on it, surfed it, shelled it, and then they obviously lost market share after other companies started developing and putting it out to the market. And I see that similar lack of movement within this industry, because the commercials don't make sense to drive innovation, because one of these machines costs anywhere from 5 to 10 million pounds, and then P&G would have 30, 35, Johnson & Johnson has, Essity, all of them have such an investment of capex into these machines, so they need to either bin them or add more money into them. And when they've got over 50% market share, what incentive do you have to shift that? So I think it is a mantle I'm happy to bear to challenge them.
Yeah. And I think what you highlight, that incentive, is really important, because as individual users, sometimes we think we don't have power, but actually we do. If enough of us use our buying power to say, actually, I don't want the stuff that's harming me, that's got poisonous chemicals, that's harming the environment, that's not biodegradable. Let me use my money with the things that are. We can actually make a huge, huge difference with that.
Absolutely. It is. I think, what was the phrase? I have to remember. It was like, once the masses know the power that they have, nothing can stop them uprising. So that, I agree. I think a big part of what we're doing is not just about, selling a flushable pad. It's, I want the consumers to demand more from their companies that they're buying from, because that's the indignation that drove me into switching from across the table from a consumer into actually, creating these products, because how dare they ask us to make the better choice when we have no choice, when we're stood in front of a shelf? How often have we been stood over a bin, poring over a label, trying to understand, and then you have to remove certain parts? It is their job and it is their responsibility to make it as easy it is for us to be better for not just ourselves but for the planet. And I think somewhere along the way we've lost the understanding of responsibility. That's a big part. That's my indignation that I want to sort of carry across and help others to help other companies hold themselves accountable.
Yeah, and the fact that we as women that are using these products have power, especially now that more options are available. Like you said, if there's no options, how can I make a better choice when there is no better choice?
Yes.
If all the big players are doing the same thing.
I also dislike the language that's used around it. I think having the term carbon footprint individualizes it. And yes, we should be conscious of our own individual footprint and how the impact that we have. But it is the carbon has been created before it's even got to you. How are you supposed to make an impact on that? So I think it's brilliant work to, shift the blame, but I think we need to start putting the blame back where it belongs.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that conversation just as much as I did. And if you did and you're still watching to this point, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who might enjoy it too. Thank you.